As we mentioned earlier, US policy is now aimed at creating a civil war in Lebanon, and already we're seeing clashes in the capital, Beirut. I spoke to Gilad Atzmon, who fought in the IDF in the wars sponsored by the US and Israel in the 1980s, about the racism of Zionism and the concept of Jewishness itself. With me is Gilad Atzmon, the legendary saxophonist. Thanks so much for coming on the show, but away from saxophones for a moment. Let's begin with, because we hardly ever get them on the show. You're a former IDF man. Tell me about your epiphany in Lebanon.
Yeah, a lot of people are excited about my IDF history. I was far from being a hero. Most of the time, I was a saxophonist.
You're an IDF saxophonist?
Yeah, I was a saxophonist in the Air Force military band. But
many of our viewers will be shocked about. I mean, Sabra and Shatila, 1982, the year they have military bands during all of this as well.
Yeah, you have to entertain the soldiers while they are killing, but this is not particularly Israeli. It's like it's a norm within Western armies. However, at a certain stage, because I come from a Zionist background, and at that stage I still believed in the military, in the Israeli military ethos, in what people in the West call Zionism. We didn't see it as Zionism as particular. We were Israeli patriots. I tried to do my best to become a combatant soldier. I was trained at a certain stage as a paramedic in a special unit, and as it happened, I saw quite a bit at the time of the Lebanon war. I saw a lot of blood of both Palestinians, Syrians, and Israelis. And it changed me completely. I realized how idiotic these wars are. Towards the end of my compulsory duty, I visited as a musician in Ansar. Ansar was basically a concentration camp, a place like Dachau or Guantanamo Bay. It was a massive camp on Lebanese soil where thousands of Palestinians and Lebanese were detained with no charges, obviously, or no proceedings. And what I saw there made me realize that as much as I was devastated by the Jewish narrative, by the Holocaust, by the Shoah, at that situation, I realized in Ansar, in Israeli uniform, surrounded by thousands of Palestinians burned by the sun, surrounded by barbed wires, I realized that in that situation, they were the Jews, I was the Nazi. And it made it very clear to me that I have to break away.
Even in describing that situation, very rarely in public discourse do you hear a comparison or even a mention in the same sentence by pro-Palestinian supporters of anything to do with the Holocaust. It's got you into a lot of trouble. Fierce critics of Zionism are blaming you for this.
I think that this is a fair comment. When I compare, when I equate between Israel and Nazi Germany, I try to be very precise and to clearly articulate what I am referring to. For instance, a lot of people within the Palestinian solidarity community or discourse like to talk about apartheid. And it makes a lot of sense because people understand what apartheid is. But I actually argue Israel is not apartheid. Apartheid is a system of exploitation of the indigenous. When it comes to Israel, Israel doesn't want to exploit the Palestinians, it wants to kick them out. So to a certain extent, Israel is actually performing here a policy that is not different from Nazi Lebensraum, living space, which is racially motivated expansionist ideology. And I think that if we do care about peace, if we do care about Palestinians, but if we also care about the Israelis and the Jews, we better start to tell the truth, because truth is of the essence, especially if we want to think of a resolution. I'm really tired of the level of spinning that is involved with Palestinian solidarity discourse. Just before we start the program, we mentioned Norman Finkelstein, who recently also admitted that he's slightly tired of it for different reasons. I have a lot of followers now, and I think that it is my duty to tell what I think, what I believe, and the fact that people are upset by it only encourages me.
Well, you've written quite a number of books now, novels, so many different albums of music. Just describe to me a little bit about the reaction to this kind of talk, the reaction to the kinds of things you've been saying.
Yeah, it is very clear. It is very clear to me.
I mean, they call you an anti-Semite.
This is completely outrageous because I really hate everyone equally. And besides, as I mentioned to you, I'm just about to buy a Volvo to my wife. So
I think you're now trying to be a Jewish comedian on the show.
Yeah,
I'm
slightly funny
that
not
but
many
seriously,
people find
I mean, there are the level of anger and saying you've conflated Zionism with Semitism.
Zionism, okay.
This kind of charge.
Yeah, I believe my philosophy is very simple, and I mentioned it many times in the past. Israel defined itself as the Jewish state. Am I right? It decorates its airplanes and tanks with Jewish symbols. These facts alone allow us to ask, what is the Jewish state? Who are the Jews? And what is Jewishness? I make a very clear distinction between Judaism, the religion, which I hardly talk about, Jews, the people, which I never refer to, and Jewishness, the ideology. It is very clear to many of us, especially after the work, following the work of Mearsheimer, Walt, and Petras, that the Jewish lobby is one of the most significant powers in Western politics. In the parliament just behind us.
But can you see the use of the word Zionist lobby versus Jewish lobby?
I don't want to use the word Zionism.
Now, why do you prefer this word Jewish lobby?
Because the word Zionism, as many Israelis admit now, recently we read about Avrum Burg talking about it, and 2 weeks ago Israeli prominent writer Gideon Levy spoke about Zionism has very little to do with Israel. Zionism was an idea, a philosophy or ideology that maintained the Jews should form their own national home in Zion, i.e. Palestine. Once the Israeli was established in 1948, Zionism, at least from Israeli perspective, is a dead concept. I wasn't born into Zionism. I was raised as an Israeli patriot. My father was born as a Palestinian, was raised as an Israeli patriot. So Zionism means nothing to Israelis. The fact that few Jewish leftists want to talk about Zionism is to maintain a spin. Zionism is very relevant. We only within the Jewish diaspora. within the debate between those, the vast majority of world Jews, who feel strong affinity to Israel, and few sporadic, maybe 1,000, maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000 Jews around the world that are really against Israel. We are talking about really few people who are very noisy, thanks God.
How are you treated for your politics, your novel writing, amidst the mainstream media? Because a lot of people criticize the mainstream media for being one of the major drivers for pro-Israel propaganda.
I must admit that there are relentless attempts. Recently, even the board of deputy of British Jews tried to stop me from playing, putting pressure on the Art Council. They named me, and I actually operated in the name of British Jews, trying to stop me from playing, trying to stop the British Art Council from supporting a festival that featured me. Until now, not a single concert of mine has been cancelled. Not a single public performance of mine has been cancelled. It is very clear. It is very clear that this is what Zionists are engaged with. But I'm also concerned by the fact that people within our ranks are employing exactly the same tactics in the name of cultural boycott. I think that freedom of speech, and I'm happy to say it here in Press TV, freedom of speech and freedom of expression is the most precious concept for us in order to maintain what we really love and admire about our own culture. I don't think that you'll find me on a stage with a Zionist, but I tell you the truth, one of my greatest heroes is an American saxophonist, David Liebman. I love his playing. I admire him. I saw him many times playing with Star of David. I never asked him what it means. I would take him with me anytime. I love his playing. I really don't care what he thinks. And again, to equate this idea with Press TV, the fact that Britain stopped Press TV from being broadcasted in this country is one of the darkest moments of a British within the history of British culture for me. I'm devastated by this idea, and it is very clear to me that if this place become a very a closed society that is engaged in censorship, and we are getting there. I'm a musician. All I have to do in order to move is just to pack my saxophone and my laptop, and I can operate from any place around this planet.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that any viewers in London can see you at Pizza Express on...
between the 7th and the 9th of June.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
Hope you enjoyed that interview with Gilad Atzmon. That's it for this week. You can email us at comment@doublestandards.tv.com.